had an impact on the skyline of New York. What is it like as you see it now?
It's like a whole different skyline. It's like a whole different city and world. I cannot believe the sight of Lower Manhattan without the World Trade Center, and therefore we have to rebuild, not necessarily in that form, but we have to rebuild at least as good and maybe better.
Rudy, thank you so much for today of all days making the time for us on the program. We have been informed that you just came from Ground Zero. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes, Ben.
And you were standing very close to Kamala Harris.
Well, I wasn't too close. I mean, they don't put those of us who had anything to do with September 11th too close to the, the ones that had the main attention were the ones who weren't there when it happened. Yes. Had very little to do with it, and are now making America much more unsafe than it was then by allowing anybody to come in that wants to come in, namely any terrorist that wants to come in.
Yes. We've done an entire show about how the goodwill after September 11th and all of the money, the trillions we've spent, none of it was spent on securing our border or reforming our immigration system. In fact, Kamala Harris just moments ago was saying that January 6th is just like September 11th. This is a day that will live in infamy, she said.
Yeah, it was hard to be there, Benny.
What would you have said to her?
I've gone, every year since it's, this is the year where I couldn't really stay. I almost felt like I wasn't being true to the memory of the people who died on that day, to be with these people. I mean, no group, no administration has ever done the damage that this group has done. I mean, I was there all through the Obama administration. I could deal with that. But to have Harris and Mayorkas there, I mean, these people are allowing an invasion of the United States to take place, and probably more than most, I have a pretty good idea of how the Islamic terrorists are taking advantage of this. I mean, just think if you were running an Islamic terrorist group and you knew that you could get anyone you wanted into the United States. Anyone. Just pay the cartels who you've been doing business with for 25 years, and they'll get them in for you, no questions asked. Would you take advantage of that? You wouldn't be much of an Islamic terrorist if you didn't. So they have sold us out. I mean, they sold us out to China. They sold us out to the Islamic terrorists. They sold us out to the cartels, whether it's Biden or Mayorkas or Harris. So after about a half hour, 45 minutes, Bernie and I decided to leave and go to a different ceremony.
Wow. So you decided to just walk because you just couldn't stand being there with
couldn't
people
take it anymore. I just couldn't take standing there with them, and all the terrible thoughts going through my mind about how they have double-crossed not only the people that gave up their lives that day, but all the people since then that have been fighting terrorism for us.
Yes.
And now we just have a completely open border.
Yes.
So that any Islamic terrorist, extremist that wants to come in can come in, or so that China can kill even more of us with fentanyl. I mean, why does China have to have a shooting war with us? They can kill 100,000 of us a year without firing a gun. They just send in fentanyl, and we take it. And Biden does nothing about it. Biden has actually done away with the special unit to focus on Chinese who were infiltrating our organizations and our universities. When I say it's the strongest bribery case I've ever seen, I'm somebody who prosecuted some of the most famous bribery cases of the 20th century. I'm not speaking lightly. I've never had a case, Benny, with the amount of evidence that you have against the Biden family. It's so much evidence that the main key in trying that case would be having the discipline to pare it down so you didn't overdo it.
Well, apparently the Republicans in Congress are listening to you because now they're citing line and verse precisely what you told me last interview about the U.S. Constitution, about federal code, and about the bribery focus. And I do want to get there, but I would like to spend one more second on a specific piece of incredibly odious and venal commentary by Kamala Harris as it pursuant September 11th. Effectively standing on the graves of nearly 3,000 Americans who died that day, saying that it is the same as January 6th. What is your commentary on that, Mr. Mayor?
My commentary is that there is something seriously wrong with her. We failed to take a good look of what was seriously wrong with Biden, and look what we got. There's something seriously wrong with Kamala Harris. Those language soup that she engages in, which almost is like a 5-year-old speaking, and that's not normal. To try to compare January 6th to September 11th, I mean, how do you even seriously do that? 3,000 people just about died on September 11th. Could be another 3,000 pretty soon with the illnesses thereafter. I think we're at about 2,734 right now. People are dying every day of related illnesses. It was a direct attack on the United States of America by a foreign enemy. None of New York City police officers killed anyone that day. In their case, a Capitol police officer killed a innocent person for no reason at all. I mean, the shooting that took place, to me, is a first-degree murder case that I'd be more than happy to prosecute against that cop. The thing was exaggerated way out of proportion. They said 4 people died. Nobody died except for the protesters. No gun was used. There's been no charge of insurrection. 1,000 arrests, no charge of insurrection. No proof of insurrection. Yet they want to charge insurrection against the president without proving it. So it's a complete phony. I mean, it's a political exaggeration of, yes, basically a bad thing that happened that deserves a certain level of proportionate punishment. But to compare it to September 11th, the Civil War, what else have they compared it to?
Pearl Harbor is the other allegory she used. Yeah.
I mean, it's absurd. I mean, it means you're living in a world of vicious, vile propaganda. About the only analogies to it would be the kind of thing the communists and the Nazis did.
So this has been a party, the modern-day Democrat Party has been a party that might tweet "Never Forget" on September 11th, but does the exact opposite. You brought up the border policies. I also wanted to harken back to a few years ago when Ilhan Omar, who is a celebrated member of the Democrat Party, said some people did something to mark September 11th and its anniversary. Your thoughts on that, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, they have no respect for what happened that day because they have no respect for our country. I mean, what happened that day is Islamic extremist terrorists, in the name of destroying us, came and attacked us. It was a foreign attack on the United States of America, and their objective was to crush us because they attacked us, our economic center, they attacked our political center, and to a very large extent, they attacked our cultural center, and they failed. They succeeded in the objective of killing a lot of us, but they failed to defeat our spirit. For some reason, thank God, we all came together after that as Americans. Now it seems to me the communists have worked around that, starting with Obama, and they've come pretty close to making us what they want. When you look at our system of non-justice, it really is much more comparable to a fascist country than to a country of laws. I mean, when the former president and the leading candidate of the opposition party gets indicted for charges that it's impossible to figure out anybody else that was ever charged with this before, then you know you have a fascist government. This is the major characteristic of a fascist government is put your enemies in jail on specious fraudulent charges. I mean, what the heck is what is going on in Georgia, or what the guy in Washington is doing? Nobody's ever been charged with those things before. I don't remember anybody ever being charged with RICO for defending his client in an election fraud case. That's what I'm charged with. I'm charged with a racketeering violation because I represented my client. And you can't tell me you didn't start going after me and persecuting me, because the first day you went and stole my my iCloud account was the first day I began representing Donald Trump 4 years ago. The FBI went and took my iCloud account without telling me. And you know when they let it go? The day I stopped representing Donald Trump. So you spied on me for 3.5 years as a lawyer without telling me. You had an affidavit claiming I was committing crimes. And then you had a right to a grand jury saying you couldn't find any crimes. Even after you searched my entire apartment, my law office, the end result of all of that, which, by the way, they never report on CNN, MSNBC, I received a letter from the U.S. Attorney's Office saying I committed no crimes. So this is a terrible situation we're in. We're only going to fix it at the ballot box, and we're going to have to fix it. And I think the only person who can fix it is Donald Trump. I like a lot of the other Republicans. I just can't be sure. I can't be sure they have the necessary, unbelievable, incredible amount of strength it's going to take to fix this.
I find this. I find what you just said there utterly compelling, Mr. Mayor, because what you seem victim of is a warrantless security state and a surveillance state that was established in the aftermath of September 11th, using the goodwill of the American people to pass the Patriot Act that desecrates the Fourth Amendment and arguably the Third Amendment in our Constitution. Your 100%. Thoughts on the Patriot Act and your thoughts on the FISA court and what this monster that it's turned into?
I was a supporter of all that. I helped to create the FISA court. You probably don't know that, but I was in the Ford administration before I was in the Reagan administration. And I was, I hired the first attorneys for the FISA court. I handled some of the first FISA warrants. I understand, but I treated the FISA court, this is way back, in the days we were going after Russian spies. I treated it as a sacred obligation. It was even more sacred than my usual obligation as a prosecutor, because no one was going to get to review what I was doing. It was between me and the court and God. So to see what Comey and these people did with it, to me was like completely shocking and very upsetting, because I supported all that. I hired Jim Comey originally as an assistant U.S. attorney. Can't understand what happened to him. And it is true. And there's a good chance that these will be taken away, and maybe have to be taken away. But then that, on the other side, that's going to leave us vulnerable to real terrorists, not parents who are worried about their children being mutilated.
So, in the aftermath of September 11th, you were able to observe Donald Trump very closely. There's this really great photo of you and him with a jackhammer. I think we have it available. And it's, can you tell me what's it? I don't know what, if you can see, Mr. Mayor, the screen right now. Can you tell me about Donald Trump in the aftermath of September 11th? Did you get to know
Donald
him?
Donald Trump was among 10 or 12 of our civic leaders that did the most to help us. I would put him in a category with George Steinbrenner, Fred Wilpon. There are certain people that really stepped up. They took it very, very seriously right from the first day. And he helped us in so many different ways, including material that we would have a hard time getting because he was in the construction business. Not only his own money, but putting us in contact with people where we could raise money. I started my own charity just for my firefighters and police officers called the Twin Towers Fund. We raised $240 million. We distributed every single penny to the firefighters and police officers' family. And we paid the administrative costs separately. Donald Trump helped us do that. He, Steinbrenner, the head of General Electric at the time, and Fred Wilpon were among the top people that did that, and about 8 or 10 others. And he was constantly volunteering help. And by the way, he did it for years. he and George Steinbrenner were good friends. And whenever a police officer was hurt, certainly killed, hurt, injured, firefighter, they'd always send him a check. And very often they'd send it through a foundation. And I would want them, I'd want to tell the family and Steinbrenner, who I guess was the senior partner in the deal, kind of said he had this biblical view that if you get the credit now, you don't get it in heaven. Right? So very often people would be getting money, they didn't know who he got it from. Donald, I used to call him Donald then, used to participate in that with his friend George. I mean, up until the time he was running for president, no one ever thought of Donald other than a very generous philanthropic New Yorker that would help you. And sometimes he'd go out of his way to help you, you know, in unorthodox ways. Like he'd see that somebody needed money and he'd come up with $5,000. He'll help that person. And he did it for, and the other thing that drives me nuts is when I hear this racism stuff or anti-Semitism stuff. I don't know a guy who's got more friends who are black, Jewish, Italian, everything. I mean, the guy just likes people. The joke about him is the only color that really was a problem for him, that he had a real fascination for, was green. But other than that, if he could make money with you, then you were really great. It was always merit or friendship. What they're doing to him, wow. I've been in politics a long time. I saw what they did to Ronald Reagan, who was my hero. This is unprecedented. And I think it's simple. I mean, it took me a while to figure it out, Ben, but it's because he's so dangerous. It really is. This is a credit. Maybe it doesn't help sometimes when you're being tortured like this, but this is a credit to how effective he is. They are afraid that he is going to destroy how they have been milking this country for years. Yes. Either being very powerful, being very rich. I mean, where would the Biden family have ever made any money other than by bribery, right? Yes. I mean, Biden couldn't get his way through grammar school.
Yes. Mr. Mayor, something that's popped up in this 2016 run, Vivek Ramaswamy, one of the Republican candidates who's brought this up, is the government obscuring some of the Saudi Arabian involvement in September 11th and the attacks and the funding of some of these hijackers that came to America. In the aftermath, they've sort of been releasing these reports and declassifying these reports. Your thought on the government and the obstructionism when it comes to how these attackers got into America, the brokenness of our immigration system, and some of the operations that seem to be the CIA not coordinating with the FBI in order to warn them about these things or to run these ops through the Saudi government. I'm not sure if you followed up on this, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on it.
I haven't in great detail because that really wasn't my area, but I do have some thoughts about it. I think this is a product of lack of transparency. I mean, I don't know how deeply involved the Saudi Arabian government was or was not. But I don't have the information that would allow me to make that decision. So whenever that information is being held back, then people who have been affected by it, like I have, and my friends, and some even worse than me, they're going to be very suspicious. It's like the 4 or 5 states that Trump, I believe, won where he was cheated. One of the reasons I believe that is they would never let me see the paper. Let's take Georgia, for example, with Governor Kemp, who I think is one of the more dishonorable men in America. They, no matter what, would never let us look at the paper. So I believe that a lot of that paper is phony, that it was written up after the election, printed up, and that if we had had a chance to forensically examine it, we could show that 40, 50, 60, 70,000 phony ballots were submitted. They have never, ever allowed for a forensic examination of it. What I mean by that is taking the paper of the official ballot, putting it in a machine, and putting all the ballots that were run against it and spitting out the ones that don't match.
And you're saying You're saying that the government obscuring some of this information in the official 9/11 report leads people to believe and to assume that there's something.
I guess I'm a New Yorker and I'm a former prosecutor, but when you don't want to give me something, I start getting funny thoughts about it, right? So let me see all the files that have to do with Saudi Arabia. You know, the Saudi Arabian government, the royal family, is very complex. There are many parts to it. It could be that some parts were involved and some parts weren't. There are parts of the Saudi Arabian government were very anti-terrorist. Some parts of the Saudi Arabian royal family had problems. Mm-hmm. So you need to see the facts. And when they won't give you the facts, you start to think, why not? They were 15 out of 19 with Saudi Arabian, so it isn't as if we're asking for no reason. It's like the same thing they're doing with the election. When they start saying Trump couldn't possibly have believed the election was stolen. Mike Kelly, I mean, had plenty of evidence from which to come to that conclusion. Plus, he had plenty of things that were held back. That were like I'm telling you, the ballots in Pennsylvania. It just so happened that in the 5 states where they stopped the balloting, counting, he was ahead, and he lost all 5. The odds don't kind of come out that way usually. It also happens that in each one of those 5, the key place was a crooked Democratic city that was involved. So it was as if the Democrats selected where they were going to do it pretty damn carefully. You can tell somebody else this. You're not going to tell me that Philadelphia isn't corrupt, that Detroit's not corrupt, that Atlanta's not corrupt. Right? Go tell that to some jerk, you know?
All right. Well, Mr. Mayor, we deeply respect, honor what you did on September 11th. I mean, we've been doing an entire show on the response, and that must have been the single hardest thing for any mayor to ever go through. And it is profound. In looking at it through the lens of history, it seems just like a country many years. You know, it seems like a different country, quite frankly.
Yeah,
good for you.
Yeah.
Good for you for walking out on the ceremony today. I suppose that's breaking some news. I didn't know that you and Bernard Kerik walked out on the official ceremony. Any parting thoughts on how Americans should remember this day?
Yeah, we should remember it for the ability of all Americans to come together and put America first, and not politics. You know, I'll give you an example. I do not understand how the members of the Biden cabinet sit there and watch him act as president every day and justify their being loyal Americans. The man is not mentally competent to carry out the office of president of the United States. It is so obvious. He gets off the stage, he doesn't know where he's walking. Being president of the United States, unbelievable responsibility. We've got a man who has a serious case of dementia that is displayed every single day, covered up every single day. The people in this administration have to know it. So their desire to maintain power, for whatever reason, overcomes their patriotism. That's very, very sad, because I wish, if I were ever in that position, I mean, I worked for 2 presidents, Ford and Reagan. If I believed that, I would do something about it. Mm-hmm. Under the 25th Amendment, I'd almost feel like it was my obligation. My country is more important than my loyalty to any president. Even my good friend Donald Trump.
Yes.
And if I saw that, I would feel I have to do something. I don't understand, out of 20 or 30 of these people, there isn't even one that wants this to be questioned, his competence to be questioned. It's frightening to me. I think the country was different back in 2001. I think the country came first.
Yes.
Everybody put aside being Democrats or Republicans. We put the country first. And if, God forbid, somebody was incompetent, we'd have all been willing to remove them.
Yes.
So
Yes.
that's where I am very, very troubled. And I shouldn't say that I walked out on the ceremony like in a huff or anything like that. Mm-hmm. I had to leave pretty early anyway. But I was I would have to say, more than I walked out, I was pretty uncomfortable there. So the fact that I had to leave early was a lot easier for me and for Bernie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I truly could not imagine. Mr. Mayor, thank you so very much for being on the program. What an important day, and what important insights from the man in the arena, the man who was there himself. And please, ladies and gentlemen, follow Rudy, support him in his fight against this tyranny state, and ensure that we will be victorious as we march forward to that America First that Rudy just spoke about. America First, that is what we felt in the aftermath of September 11th. That's what September 12th was about, like putting the country first. It'd be nice to get that again. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.